Thank you. Thank you. And now that we concluded with the support, we would like to allow people to add on as supporters. If you could just say your name and where you're from, that'd be greatly appreciated. That way we can move on to opposition. We'd love to hear from their side as well. So please step up forward and we'll go ahead and add on to the people who support. Thank you.
Barry Broad on behalf of the Teamsters Amalgamated Transit Union, Unite Here, Machinists, etc. If you want, I can address the question of how tipped employees are compensated, because actually there is very clear law in California, but I won't do it unless you want me to.
Yeah, for a minute. Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so here's how it works. If an employer puts a service charge in, they can control the distribution of the tips between employees. They can't put any of the money in their own pocket. With a tip credit, the employer, the restaurant employer, actually takes the money away from the tipped employee, and they can distribute it if they want, or they can keep it themselves for the owner or management people. So if the issue is, do you want to share among employees, there is a mechanism for doing it now. And of course, tipped employees typically in restaurants do share among each other, but it's an arrangement they make with each other. And then the other thing to keep in mind, the average tipped employee in California earns $22,000 a year. There aren't like a lot of $80,000 wait staff. They're mostly poor people. So the subject here, the issue here is transferring wealth from one group of poor people to another group of poor people. That's really all it's about, or into the pocket of the employer, because remember, the employer doesn't pay the tip, the customer pays the tip. And finally, I'll just say on that subject, while it's tempting to suggest that people share these tips, a lot of times tipped employees work part-time. They're not full-time employees. And so the tips that they get are for the busy days or nights that they work, Friday and Saturday. Other times they're not making that much money, and they frequently don't work 40 hours a week. They work more like 20 hours a week. So all that has to be weighed, but keep in mind, there's not an endless supply of rich waiters and waitresses in our society prepared to hand over money to somebody else because they're overpaid. So with that, I would say please support the bill. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Khalil. I'm from Oakland, and I'm with ACE, and I'm a low-wage worker. And in behalf of thousands of low-wage workers and 20 ACE members around the state, we urge you to support the SB3. Me, as far as my experience as a low-wage worker, it's difficult enough to make the money to pay the rent, pay the water, pay the phone bills, take care of your kids, and it's difficult enough to go to school with all this, or if you have to take care of family, and let alone with medical bills. So raising the minimum wage would help a lot of people in California. It would benefit a lot and change a lot of people's life. So I urge you to support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. Sam Rodriguez with the United Food and Commercial Workers and a co-sponsor of SB3 with Senator Leno and Senator De Leon and Senator Connie Leyva. I want to be very brief. We represent 160,000 workers in California, primarily in the food, retail, grocery, and pharmacy industry. But we also have some workers in the highly skilled food processing plants scattered across the state. Last year, we commissioned a research study at the Food Labor Research Center at the University of California, Berkeley, done by Dr. Chris Benner at UC Davis, to examine comprehensively the state food retail industry and employment trends. One of the major findings we discovered was that the state food retail industry has continued to grow at a staggering rate, providing double-digit employment from 1990 to 2012, and impressive revenues for corporate growth and dividends for stockholders. However, the same cannot be said for workers in the same industry whose wages have declined in the median hourly wages of grocery store workers. The largest segment of food retail workers fell from $12.97 in 1999 to $11.33 in 2010, a decline of 12.6%. We believe SB3 is the right approach at the right time for state lawmakers to advance a policy long overdue to benefit workers and the overall economy of the state. We respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Thank you. So again, name, your position, your affiliation, be great. Thank you.
My name's Sean Raycraft. I work at one of those stores that he's talking about in Davis. I'm a shop steward. I'm with Davis Citizens for a Living Wage. We strongly support SB3.
Great, thank you.
Good afternoon, Tia Orr on behalf of the Service Employees International Union. We represent over 700,000 members who are in strong support of SB3.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Kathy Sunderling with the County Welfare Directors Association, also in support of the bill.
Justin Fans on behalf of the California State Association of Electrical Workers, Western States Council of Sheet Metal Workers, California State Pipe Trades Council, and the Coalition of California Utility Employees, all in support. Thanks.
Kevin Insko, Friends Committee on Legislation of California, in strong support.
Kim Rutledge with UDW, AFSCME Local 3930, representing 66,000 IHSS workers throughout the state of California. We stand in strong support. This is one of the most quickly growing workforces in the state of California, and quite frankly, our state can't afford not to pay them above the minimum wage. Most of our workers make barely $9 an hour, and when they get more than that, they contribute back to the economy. So to address Senator Stone's comments about IHSS workers specifically, the state can't afford not to pay them above the minimum wage and to pay them a higher wage than they are now. Thank you.
Linda Warner with the California Catholic Conference, in strong support.
Gina De Silva with the California Immigrant Policy Center, in strong support.
Mitch Seaman with the California Labor Federation, also in support.
Rebecca Gonzalez with the National Association of Social Workers California chapter, representing over 10,000 social workers in California, in support.
Sophia Sadat on behalf of the City of Oakland, Libby Schaff, in strong support.
Tristan Brown with the California School Employees Association, in strong support. Thank you.
Sylvia Solis-Shaw on behalf of City of Los Angeles Mayor Eric Garcetti. Currently, nearly a quarter of the city's population lives in poverty. Raising the state minimum wage would go a long way to help out those folks. Thank you.
Bernardo de la Torre for the California Applicant Attorneys, strong support.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Jason Schmelzer on behalf of the City and County of San Francisco and Mayor Ed Lee. As you know, San Francisco voters passed an initiative that brings the minimum wage to $15 an hour by 2018. We're strongly in support of the Senator's bill. Thank you.
Mr. Chair and members, Mark Schock with California Rural Legal Assistance Foundation, also in support.
Mr. Chair and members, Roxanne Miller, representing the Mayor, City Council of City San Jose, in strong support.
Lindsay Carpenter, representing the YWCA of San Francisco and Marin, and hundreds of women and children around the state, in strong support.
Hi, my name is Neela Yarbrough, and I'm an ACE member, and I'm also from San Francisco. And me and my daughter, we are low-wage workers. We both have to work in order to make ends meet, and I strongly support.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the comments and the add-ons. Let's go ahead and proceed with the opposition. If you could step forward and take some seats up. I'd love to hear from you.
I'll call you later.
You want me?
Close.
Real close. Yes.
Seems like old times.
Great, thank you.
We've done this before.
Good morning, John Ross on behalf of the California Restaurant Association. I'll try and keep my remarks under an hour and 20 minutes. Might be a struggle.
Parity, yeah.
Do our best.
We'll do some balance right here. We'll give you an hour and a half.
Hour and a half is fine. I think Mr. McKaylee and I can cover it in that. I'll also start by stipulating I don't want to get up here and get into a macroeconomic argument with my former professors at UC Berkeley. I'm a lawyer, not an economist, but I'm told that makes me an expert on almost anything. So I'll offer our remarks in that context. What I can do is give voice to the significant concerns that the state's restaurants have when they look at this proposal. First, what's proposed here is a 63% increase in the state minimum wage over a 3-year period. When you look at where we started in 2010 and where we'll end up as these various, I mean, with the passage of the bill in 2010, the first hour or dollar going into effect last year, another dollar an hour going into effect on January 1, you're looking at a $5 increase over a very short period of time. There's no model out there of actual experience that can tell you what the impacts will be, and to us, that's a heck of an experiment. Trying to impose that kind of a cost impact on a restaurant model where 2/3 of your costs are labor costs, to see those go up by 63% over that short period of time is daunting. The assumption is that this will be borne by price increases, but our operators, especially the small ones who are local, know that they can't raise prices at that rate that fast. Small increases over time is the way that prior minimum wage increases have been dealt with, but those have been increases in the 25, 50 cent, and then the biggest one ever in 2010 going up $2 over an 18-month period. So what is being suggested here is fundamentally different than anything that's been tried in the state before or tried anywhere else, and our guys are very, very daunted by the challenge that this would pose. Second, to the state costs, we got a study prepared by Capital Matrix. We asked them to look at the numbers the same way the Department of Finance would score it for the budget on a static basis. And their conclusions were that fully implemented in 16-17, the state cost would be between $680 and $860 million a year. It's on a static basis. That's the way we score things for budget purposes here. The difference, perhaps, between some of the work that was suggested by the economists on the prior panel is that they were taking into effect some of the dynamic impacts, which we don't do typically in state budgeting. They were looking at increased sales taxes and other things that would result from increased economic activity. Looking at the static costs, which is what the budget committees in this House do, it's a cost to the state of $680 to $860 million a year. Third, I guess we disagree. We accept, and I think everybody who's looking at this observes the challenges of growing inequality in our society. Restaurant operators and restaurant owners are not Walmart owners. They're, middle-class folks too. And certainly, to the extent that the premise is that the disparity in California is a result of the minimum wage not keeping pace, we disagree. If you look at the minimum wage adjusted for inflation since 1980, you land today at about $9 an hour. More recently, if you go back and look at what the people did in 1996 when they passed a Living Wage Act, and you take that minimum wage passed by the people and adjusted for inflation, you're just a little over $9. We're going to $10 in 6 months. So looking at least historically at what the minimum wage in the state has meant, the minimum wage itself has kept up over time. There are gaps, but we don't think it's a function of the minimum wage falling behind that's created that gap. Two other points, if I can. There was a significant discussion about minimum wage workers and whether they're all teens or not teens. We agree in our restaurants, minimum wage workers aren't teens, and right now they're tending to be, it's less likely that they'll be teens. The Brookings Institute did a study 2 years ago that looked at the question of teen underemployment nationally and was starting to highlight what the impacts are on communities in this state and nationally of teens not finding work as they're in high school or out of high school, not finding entry-level job skills. Those used to come from restaurants. What that study found that was in the United States, the six of the top 10 urban areas or jurisdictions with the highest rates of teen underemployment or the lowest rates of teen employment were in California. 6 of the top 10 nationally are here. That's a function we know of the fact that teen workers are being priced out of entry-level employment they used to get in places like restaurants. Finally, Ms. Senator Mitchell had a question, and we'll speak just briefly to the impact within restaurants. We've done studies. We'll share them with the committee and the author on tip compensation in restaurants in California. Averages tips an hour, $15 to $20 an hour. Add that to the minimum wage. You're looking at people who make $20, $25 an hour on average. There's going to be people below people above that. When we've discussed in Los Angeles and other places, total compensation proposals, it's to say if someone on average is earning above an income threshold, $15, whatever the number is, that's what we've talked about in the Capitol, that group of people wouldn't see their wages reduced, they just wouldn't benefit from the next increase in the minimum wage. Our goal is to preserve those labor dollars to compensate people who are making closer to the minimum wage, not $20, $25 an hour. So that's the spirit in which we've been discussing those proposals, and that's one of the things that's sort of crude about the minimum wage as applied in the typical restaurant environment is it doesn't take account for those disparities within the House. I'm done.
That's quick.
I'll reserve my right to come back with another 20 minutes.
Mr. Chair and members, Chris McKaylee on behalf of the California Ambulance Association. And although there are a handful of large corporate-owned providers in this state, the vast majority of the 165 private companies are very small, often family-owned businesses in this state, and they are struggling under the tremendous cost of doing business in the state and the ridiculously low rate of Medi-Cal reimbursement in this state. It feels a little like deja vu all over again since we debated AB 10 barely 2 years ago, and obviously, as Mr. Ross indicated, the first increase was about 9 months ago, last July, and in about 8 months, we'll have the second dollar increase. I think from our membership's perspective, we would like to see how that impacts the state of California and the job market before we start instituting additional increases, and we're certainly troubled by the automatic cost of living adjustment, although it's got a delayed implementation to the 2018 range. The reality is that that is only done in a minority of states. We have a full-time legislature. It is something that we can revisit. It is something that the legislature has rejected previously. I think as Senator Stone indicated, this bill has to be put in the context of the other costs of doing business in the state. He mentioned a few, the increases at Prop 30. We, of course, have the highest base sales tax rate in the nation, the highest PIT rates in the nation, one of the largest, highest corporate rates, certainly in the western U.S. We've seen a substantial diminution in the credit for unemployment insurance. Certainly the ACA, and most recently, starting this July 1, will be the impact of paid sick leave in the state of California. All of that has to be taken into consideration. We also tend to look at the minimum wage all by itself without that context, but also the minimum wage impacts other things, including the definition of who is an exempt employee. There are generally two tests, one of which is the salary basis test, which is 2 times the amount of minimum wage, going up to $13 an hour. I think if my calculation is correct, will be about a $15,000 per employee impact in that regard, and so that's also going to drive the salaried employees up as well. It also impacts worker comp costs, everything from uniform and tool reimbursement, and ultimately consumer prices. I only took one economics class back in college, but I found the professor indicated a few comments that I found noteworthy, although he cited a fair amount with Fortune 500 companies. If I took the quote down right, he said, some businesses will fail. In fact, some small businesses will, and I think if anything, this bill will ultimately drive more small businesses to fail more quickly. And speaking personally from my client's perspective, the state of California reimburses us for about 1/4 of the actual costs of 911 transports. And until the state starts increasing that amount, at least to the federal Medicaid level, imposing additional costs upon the private sector in the state of California is truly unwarranted. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. If we could have the rest of the opposition, if you can come forward and begin to add on, I would greatly appreciate that. Again, if you can reiterate the name, your position, and your and also who you're representing. Thank you.
Nicole Rice, California Manufacturers and Technology Association. We're also here opposed to the bill. If I might just be able to make a statement about our industry. We appreciate the conversation about the poverty in the state of California and lifting individuals to a different lifestyle and to a middle-class lifestyle. We would argue that manufacturing is the answer to California's middle-class crisis. With the right training and growth opportunity in the industry, we can offer those jobs that will pay well above minimum wage salaries. However, there are lots of reasons why manufacturing is declining: competition, innovation. But the point that I'd like to make is that even though we might not see manufacturing at the same level that we have once in California, we also have to take into consideration the cost and how much manufacturing can bear. Some of that cost has been identified by previous speakers, but as an industry, we're under a variety of different regulations, cap and trade, environmental policies, and such. And so the cost of all of that being piled on, in addition to policies that have been discussed today, it significantly impacts our industry. The question is, how much can the industry bear? And we might not know what that tipping point might be. We might not see it for years or decades, but at some point I would submit that there will be a tipping point. And we want to continue to have a diversity in California's economy, not have this economy go towards, as we're seeing, increases in jobs and service sectors that do provide those lower wages. We want to continue that diversity, bringing those middle-class jobs to California, and that's what we believe manufacturing to do. So we just ask, as the committee considers this, and as the bill, I believe, will continue to move forward, that we just continue to look at that balance and achieving that balance so that we can maintain that job growth in these middle-class economies, but also be able to help individuals move from those low-wage jobs into these middle-class opportunities and even higher. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair and members. Ken DeVore with the National Federation of Independent Business, largest small business association in the country, and this is going to be a $7,500 per employee cost to small business owners. If you have 10 employees, that's $75,000 you have to come up with, so we oppose.
Good morning, Matthew Allen, Western Growers Association. We're also opposed to the bill.
Good morning, Brian Little with the California Farm Bureau Federation, also in opposition. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, Fred Main on behalf of the Chamber of Commerce Alliance of Ventura and Santa Barbara County, disproportionately made up of hospitality, restaurant, hotels, and they are opposed based on the rapid increase. Thank you.
Hi, good morning. Nicolina Hernandez with Political Solutions on behalf of the California Travel Association and the Western Car Wash Association in opposition. Thank you.
Hi, Ivan Altamura representing the California Retailers Association, also in opposition.
Hi, my name is Elena Garduno. I'm here on behalf of the California Child Development Administrators Association. I'd also like to read a quick statement. We're pleased to support the intent behind SB 3. However, without increased funding for state contracting agencies, we're just unable to support it. CCDA's mission is to ensure that all of California's children have access to high-quality child development and early education services. Subsidized early education programs, including state preschool, have state contracts, which dictate their set reimbursement rate. As such, employees of these agencies are often paid close to the minimum and are provided lower levels of benefits and compared to their K-12 peers. Research clearly shows the benefits of quality early learning experiences for preschool-age children with high needs. An increased minimum wage or living wage for state contracted employees is beneficial for employees and employers across the state, and we're happy to support the concept, but cannot support the bill as written without additional funding for these much-needed support programs. Thank you.
Thank you. Great. Thank you so much. Any comments from the committee members? No? No more? Okay. Yes.
I think I would just say in closing that, first of all, I'm thrilled that we continue to have a robust conversation in this institution about poverty, income inequality. I think it's dangerous sometimes when we blur the terminology. It may be a matter of semantics, but there are different segments of the population. And, Senator Stone, I wish that we had the luxury as policymakers to wait for the effect of increased funding to job training and higher education programs to have life-changing impact on families and the workers in the state of California. And given the child poverty rate today in California, I don't know that we have that luxury. And so while we spend a lot of time talking about poverty in this institution, I think that we really have to look at not only this measure and who it will impact, but a package, a broad perspective of long-term strategies to impact poverty and what we must do today to impact working families' household income so they can lift their children out of deep poverty and poverty. And so, again, I hope that we continue the conversation and that we're clear about what our responsibilities are today as well as longer-term planning. And with that, I'll be supporting the measure today. Thank you.
You moved it?
So moved.
Do you have any more closing comments? Senator Leonard, can you please close?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And again, thank you for your generosity of time. Clearly a very important issue for all stakeholders. I just want to clean up a few things that have been suggested here. I don't want to get into debate over it, but figures that we have show that if you take the original California minimum wage and adjust it for inflation, that it would be closer to $11 an hour today, not $9 an hour. So I think it has lost its purchasing value. And with regard to the unprecedented proposal of what we're doing here with regard to increasing California's minimum wage from $8 an hour, where it was before AB 10, to where we're planning to go with SB 3 by 2017. The current minimum federal wage is $7.25 an hour. President and Senator Stone agree that it should be increased to $10.10 an hour. That's a 40% increase. So this is not beyond what many are already agreeing. As I said, Bill O'Reilly's comment, no big deal. And with regard to the debate between different economists, over 600 noted economists throughout the country, including 7 Nobel laureates, representing institutions such as Stanford, Harvard, MIT, University of California, Cornell, Tulane, the universities of Texas, Pennsylvania, Massachusetts, Michigan, Northwestern, all signed a letter addressed to the President, to Speaker Boehner, Majority Leader Reid, Congressman Cantor, Senator McDonnell, and Congresswoman Pelosi. So this is from a couple years ago, in full support of the President's $10.10 proposal. And in it, these noted economists, 600 of them, said, at a time when persistent high employment is putting enormous downward pressure on wages, such a minimum wage increase would provide a much-needed boost to the earnings of low-wage workers. Research suggests that a minimum wage increase could have a small stimulative effect on the economy as low-wage workers spend their additional earnings raising demand and job growth and providing some help on the jobs front. So very much in concurrence with Professor Reich's comments, and he, of course, is among the 600 who signed this letter. So just in closing, there is a huge momentum across the country right now to raise the minimum wage state by state. By popular votes in 4 conservative states, Alaska, Arkansas, Nebraska, and South Dakota, minimum wage increases were approved in the 2014 general election. Legislatures in Connecticut, Delaware, Hawaii, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, Minnesota, Rhode Island, Vermont, West Virginia, and Washington, D.C. legislatively enacted increases during the 2014 session. And we've seen in the private sector CEOs showing leadership and concurring with the CEO of Walmart's suggestion that this is an investment upon which they will get a return. Joining Walmart is McDonald's, Target, The Gap, and others. And with regard to the automatic cost of living adjustment, this will give clarity and certainty to businesses. They will know exactly what to expect. And we won't have to go through this every few years and to have the same arguments put forward about how devastating this will be to job growth in the economy when we've just done it and we have proof positive that quite the opposite has happened. Yes, some businesses have left California in recent years, but we have the fastest growing job market in the entire country right now. And those who are creating the jobs know that we're going to increase our minimum wage yet another $1 next year, and they are well aware that SB 3 is before the legislature right now. And with all full knowledge, nothing speaks louder than money. And over 50% of all venture capital dollars invested in the United States of America right now are being invested in California. This is where the smart money is. This is where those who have it want to invest it because they know they're going to see even more of it. So the final question I think before us, and this is, I think, the bigger issue, does it make moral or fiscal sense to continue to allow poverty wages to be legal? That's really the question. And I'm very happy to work with those who are in opposition. If there's another path to get our minimum wage to a federal poverty level, which doesn't account for the 30% higher cost of living in California and doesn't even have a line item for the cost of child care. It's a very conservative level of poverty. But how do we get us there? What's the path? If it's not by 2017, can we get there by 18, 19? When do we get there? Because without this bill, all of those who are in opposition today, they're not going to suggest we ever need to go higher than $10. They'll be happy to see it frozen there for as many years as they can. How do we get minimum wage to minimally the federal poverty level? This bill can do it. I would ask for your vote.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the robust discussion. I think we all love to see this issue continue to be dealt with and spoken about, because I do think that many of our constituents do want to see the minimum wage be raised. Somehow, there's differences of opinions on how much and how fast, but we'd love to see this bill move forward and continue to have that discussion, so we can have hopefully you'll be able to work out some of the concerns that have been brought up. But I do appreciate the really good discussion that we had this morning. So
as do I. Thank you.
And we're gonna go and proceed with the roll call. And when I'm done with the roll call, Mr. Stone will continue with the meeting as I go present in education. So with that, Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
The motion is due pass to appropriations. Mendoza?
Aye.
Mendoza, aye. Stone?
No.
Stone, no. Jackson? Leno?
Aye.
Leno, aye. Mitchell?
Aye.
Mitchell, aye.
Leave the roll open.
Thank you, colleagues.
We're going to do Mendoza next. Okay. Okay, we're at our item number 3, SB 559, Senator Block. Good morning, sir.